Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, very good.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to go into presentation mode, and I'm basically going to run through the deck, right? This is what we talk to clients about, so I think it's good for you guys to hear it as well. This started out as a request within the Nicole sales team. So we meet every Monday, Thursday at this slot. And so one of the things is that when we're talking to clients, sometimes it doesn't go the learning way, right? Sometimes it goes the engagement way. So it's important that we're all familiar with all the products and it's good to know what the key value propositions are that we sell. So when you're talking to clients, you should have a certain level of comfort talking about it. And if you need more depth, then you bring in somebody like me to talk about it. So for now, I think the two people who are most comfortable pitching probably Adeline and myself. Ra knows how to pitch it pretty well. Nigesh knows how to pitch it pretty well. But Adeline and I do most of the pitching for the company. And then, of course, Ava will come in as well. Okay, so I'll get started. I'll go into presentation mode. I'll share with you what we tell clients. But in general, for digital, we're saying that we're offering learning and engagement solutions. Learning solutions are things like Disperse, LMS, LXP, Nicole. Engagement solutions are Happily. And Mentor Cloud kind of fits both bills. It's both learning and engagement. So that's kind of how the mix is. So we focus on learning and engagement. Okay. So, introduce Happily and tell them that it's an employee engagement solution. And the first thing I ask is, do they value employee engagement? And usually they say yes. And then I kind of cover a few statistics on employee engagement, right? What we know about engagement, and this is proven over and over again in many, many studies, is that if you had one lever that you wanted to turn in a company to impact the most number of things, employee engagement is it, right? Because it affects productivity, it affects retention, it even affects customer happiness score. That means if your organization serves clients, if your employees' engagement goes up, you will see that your client satisfaction score with you goes up, right? Happier employees, happier customers. So there's a lot of evidence around employee engagement, and we can send that to you if you want, but at least, we start off saying that employee engagement is important and everybody agrees that it's important. And the first thing I ask is, so how do you handle employee engagement right now? And most people say, well, we do an employee engagement survey once a year, twice a year. And really, that leads me to the next slide where I say, listen, engagement is not a survey, right? And there's two problems with why a survey doesn't work. The first problem is accuracy, because most of the times when you issue a survey, you are prone to recency bias. What I mean by recency bias is if that employee had a bad day today or a bad week this week, or they had a bad conversation with their manager this week, your scores are going to be low. And it's not reflective of how the employee feels throughout the year. It's only reflective of how the employee feels right now, right? So you have a recency bias, which means your scores aren't accurate. If you just had an annual dinner yesterday and you launched the survey today, the scores are going to go up, right? If you just shared your financials yesterday and you launched the survey today, your scores might go down or up depending on the results. And so that's really not a good way to even get data, right? And the second problem that we have with the survey is this. Let's say you figure out how to do a proper survey and you get accurate results, right? You are reporting on something after the fact. Your employees might be happy for 12 months or unhappy for 12 months, and you're only reporting it now. What can you do about that, right? So the problem with employee engagement is that if an employee gets disengaged, it's very hard to bring them back 12 months later, right? You have to catch it at the point of disengagement and fix it at that point. You can't fix it 12 months later or after the fact. So these are the biggest problems with employee engagement. That's most companies think employee engagement is a survey, and then they're going to do a survey, and then they're going to do a massive rollout of a initiative for the next 3 months on how to bring back up employee engagement scores. But when they say bring back up employee engagement scores, they mean the next time they run the survey, the score is going to be higher, right? Which again is not accurate, recency bias, and it's after the fact. Everybody good so far? Again, please jump in and ask questions so that I don't, drain out by the end of this presentation. So the employee experience goes like this. It shows that, people have red days, right? Red days are days that you are definitely not engaged. And it's natural for you to have down days and up days, right? Everybody feels this. But the problem is if there's too many red days in a row, an employee becomes disengaged. And then they become actively disengaged. And at that point, it's very hard to flip it back around. But if you catch a red day at the right time, quickly, and you have the right conversation with the person, you're actually able to flip it very quickly. It's actually not hard, right? You just have to know why, and you have to have the right intervention at the right time. So moment of need. And it's like employees, this is how it works, right? Once they check out, right? And they start exploring other things, and then they've just not, their heart's not into it, it's very, very hard to come back. So it's absolutely important that you catch these things immediately. And Happily helps you do that, right? It helps you catch the red days because there's many interventions that we have that helps collect this data. And then there's many ways that we help to flip it to a green day. So the conversations with the managers, the data, how's that data used, how's that data being interpreted, and we give it to the managers that they can do something with it. Okay, so this I covered this already. And so that brings us to Happily, the solution, right? The goal is to have better employee engagement through real-time feedback. We want to support people managers because we know that the management layer of your company has the most impact on the employee engagement scores, right? They are directly interacting with your employees. And when they have the right data and they know how to interact with the employees, they can make the biggest difference. So we want to support them. We also have other features in Happily to help develop, to encourage self-improvement, and we make it fun as well so that people keep coming back and using the software. Okay, so moving on. So I'll go through 4 different sections of Happily. The first section is feedback and recognition. How do we collect this data? And this is how we collect the data. It's an app. All of you know it because all of you are on it. And the key is that we ask simple questions every day. And the idea behind this is you want to ask questions that are easy and quick to answer. And people will answer them out of a gut feel, an instinct. They'll be very quick about it, right? Unless people are intentionally trying to lie to you, the first instinct and first answer is usually the correct answer. It reflects how they feel. And we want to make this question simple and quick. So the idea is every day you spend less than 30 seconds answering the questions. And in order to encourage you to answer these questions, we give you coins. So you can see the simple question, how are you feeling at work today? You answer the question, you get a coin. And what these coins are used for, I'll explain later, but you can see the coin total being accumulated up there. And these questions are all designed using data science and psychology. And our machine learning algorithms actually analyze these questions and answers over time to give you insights. Yeah. Now, when we ask these questions, we're not just simply asking some random questions. These questions are all specifically designed to give us insight across 11 different dimensions of work life, right? Because you know what? It's not important to know that someone's disengaged. You want to know why they're disengaged, right? I want to know that this person's disengaged because of the relationship with manager, or maybe it's because of personal growth, or maybe because they don't get enough recognition. So with Happily, I get not only engagement levels, I get to find out which dimension is a problem area for this team, or which dimension is a problem area for this person. And I actually can go even lower than this. So even if the problem is recognition, right, I can even go lower and say, what about recognition is the problem? And when you get into that kind of detail, it really helps an organization, HR, or a manager solve the problem quickly. Instead of saying I have a disengaged employee, right? That's useful, but I don't know how to act on it. Now I give you on dimension by dimension. Some questions are objective like this. Some questions are subjective questions, open-ended questions. And again, a lot of our questions are carefully crafted to be positive self-reflection because people tend to answer positive self-reflective questions more often and more honestly. So an example, in the past month, which of your achievements are you most proud of? If you submit these questions, you get more coins. Sometimes you get actually more than the objective questions. You don't have to. You can always skip a question, right? And then you just don't get the coins. For the objective questions, you can't skip it. For the subjective questions, you can skip it. And these questions, when you answer them, the answers actually go to your manager. So it shows up in their inbox, so to speak. And the managers can then respond to you. So now we're creating conversations between direct managers and employees. And these are conversations that they might not otherwise have. So for example, this question here, right? It sounds like a very simple question, but as a manager, I might not remember to ask this question of the people that work for me, right? So Happily helps me ask these questions because these are important questions. And you might be surprised at what you find out. So an employee might write down something here that when I read it back and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that that was something that they were proud of. It helps me understand the employee. It helps me recognize the employee. It helps me have that really meaningful conversation. And when you have these meaningful conversations, relationships improve and engagement improves. Okay. We don't only encourage conversations between manager and employee, but we also encourage kind of like a 360 conversations. So once a month, everyone gets to choose 2 people in the entire organization that they would like feedback from. And they select it on the app and it automatically gets managed by the app. And the person who gets the invite just has to answer 3 questions. What is something, this person was good at? What is something this person could improve on? And what would you rate them? And by providing feedback, you also get rewarded, right? The whole system's gamified with the coins. And we ensure that we encourage feedback. That's something that's very important in Happily, right? There's some certain cultures that we want to build in organizations, which is, are you a feedback giving culture? Are you a recognition driven culture? Are you a culture where there's open conversation between managers and employees? These are the type of culture that we're trying to build. So you'll see some of these features are built to support these cultural development in organizations. Now, in organizations like Leaderonomics, a lot of this already exists, right? We already are very open for feedback. We're already very open with recognition. So we might not move the needle as much with Happily, but you'd be surprised at some of the culture that's out there in different organizations. So you can really make a huge difference, right? I'm going to take a pause to take a sip of water. Any questions? I see, is there a chat question here? Daily questions can be customized, right, Sashe, by the manager? Yep. Okay, great question, Sashe. So the daily questions, there's an admin panel, and I'll show it to you later, where the questions are all scheduled up front. So there's system scheduled questions, and there's HR scheduled questions. So HR has every right to come in and say, I don't want some of these questions. So for example, if you didn't like this question, in your organization, you don't want to ask this question, you can come into the panel and just turn this off. And this question will never get asked. Or if you want to ask a very specific question, you can add it in and schedule it. And you can schedule it for a one-time share or a weekly question or a monthly question or a quarterly question. So yes, you have full control over the questions as well. What do you usually say when someone asks, how do we know their answers are authentic? Right. Yeah, good question. And Aaron, I'll kind of jump into this. Maybe I'll jump around our slides, and since now internal sharing, I will jump around in slides a little bit. If I can find my slide. Where's my slides? Can't find my slides. Oh, there it is. Okay. So really, to Aaron's question, how do I know if it's true or not? So, you turn it on and you get all the features from day 2, right? Day 2 onwards, you get insights. Week 1, you get weekly insights. The thing is, people don't tend to be honest in the first week. And you really need it to become a habit before people are more likely to be honest, right? And this is my answer to you. One is, once it becomes a habit where you're just answering, you tend to be more honest. It's just psychological, right? Because you don't want to spend so much attention to it. Lying actually takes effort, right? So once you build the habit of doing this, you tend not to lie. That's number 1. Number 2, there might be some people who are not truthful, but it's easier for them not to answer, actually. Okay. Sorry, I had to sneeze. So it's actually more easier for them not to answer. And if they really don't want to answer, I think that's okay. But there are others who are trying to answer. So for me, even if 50% of the people are using it actively and being honest, and you're helping the engagement of 50% of your employees, that's a huge shift, right? Huge impact to employees. There are some who don't want to participate. There are some who are actively disengaged. And no matter what you do, it won't work, right? Uh, Leave them aside. There's always this 80-20 rule, right? You don't want to focus on those 20% that's going to take, moving the universe to get them to answer. Don't worry about that. But what you want to do is you want to get other people to answer, and you might get some honesty there. Now, the way you get honesty is by what you do with the data. So if managers are using the data to change the way they interact with their employees, to do things that are recommended by the app, or if HR is using the data to run programs, to help teams, then people see that. It's a positive feedback loop, right? Hey, when I give this data, something's happening. The organization's paying attention. They're doing something about it. Then you create this positive feedback loop. Then I'll be more inclined to keep answering and to give you more honest and truthful answers. And that's the idea. The idea isn't that feedback can't be bad, right? What you do with the feedback is what matters. So hopefully I answered that question. Let me see, there's lots of questions. Yeah, how do we ensure that employees participate on a daily basis, especially for a more conservative organization? Yeah, Ud, I hear you. And that's definitely one of the questions that I get a lot of. And I'm going to be looking for another slide somewhere here. Okay. So global averages for this app, 82% answer daily and 90% weekly, and there's 60% of them answer the subjective assignment. Now, my take is this, right? Even if this was down to 50%, right? Would you think it's worth it? That 50% of the people don't use it, but 50% of the people use it. Because even if 50% of the people use it, now you're giving them a voice, right? And now you have some data versus no data. And you're able to do something for those 50% of the people. And even if you improve the engagement of 50% of the people, you've already made a difference for the organization. That's number one. Now, why do people use it over and over and over again? A couple of reasons. Number one, it's gamified, right? So you get coins. So how good your rewards are actually does make a difference on whether people use it or not. If you're having, really interesting rewards and people know that these coins can be redeemed for tangible things and valuable things to them, and that's why it's personalized. So you should have like a catalog of like 20 different things, because some people might like food as a reward. Some people might like to see their managers dance and sing as a reward. Some people might like to give money to charity as a reward. So that could be a redemption as well. You can create a charity giving. So they know that they're like, for example, if I'm really passionate about giving to charity, and I know that if I answer these questions, I'm able to give to charity, right? I'm earning coins to give to charity. I might be motivated to use it. So rewards and redemption is one reason. Number two, people use it because once they finish the questions, they get to the feed. And when you get to the feed, you get to see how people in your organization are recognizing each other, because you get to give each other 3 coins, 5 coins. And you can only get to that feed if you answer your questions. So that's the second reason why people answer the questions daily. The third reason is because they see that by answering the questions, the data is being used in a positive way. Their manager is improved. HR is taking it seriously. We report on it quarterly, or there's strategic initiatives that come out of these answers. So then we take it seriously. So these are 3 reasons. And then of course, fourth, if you get to a point where it just becomes a habit, right? I wake up, I answer the questions. I wake up, I answer the question. So it can become habit forming as well. So there are many reasons that I can give to answer, but ultimately my final question to you is that even when companies do their annual employee survey, right? For those of us who worked in large corporates, right? It's like pulling teeth, right? So HR will launch this annual employee engagement survey. Let's say you have a company of 1,000 people. And then because the responses are like low, they're like 50% response rate. Think about it, huh? It's a one-time survey a year and response rates are like 50%. Most of you will be able to relate to this. And then HR will tell all the managers, your department entry is very low. Please make sure your people submit. So every team meeting, I have to tell my people, hey, can you please fill out the HR survey? Hey, can you please fill out the engagement survey? Right? So even then, even if it's once a year, the completion rate, the engagement rate is very low. People don't trust the process a lot, right? For the fact that we get 82% engagement here, or even if I get 60-70% engagement here, right? I think it's a huge win every day, versus like 70-80% for once a year. So those are my different opinions on that. Hopefully I answered that.
Sashe, this is Vix here.
Yeah.
We got to the point from Churayapon. I think I just want to share something based on what I've got feedback. I think may be helpful. Most companies, I think the question is, a conservative organization. I think we go back. How Happily does help is, one is when you have remote organization, people are working remotely throughout the country. This is a good platform to keep the engagement going. That's one. At least your employees are engaging. Second is also to monitor not only the employees, but also the supervisors. When they give feedback, how quickly the supervisors go back with a response, etc. is super important. Then the third part is when they come to their performance review, they do annually or once in 6 months. The statistics will show the coins, or we can even do the coins or statistics will show that this employee has given so many feedback and the response from the supervisor is so many. So human resource has some data to manage conflict or issues, because some supervisor might say, I don't like this guy, was bad. Then when you look at the data, they say, actually, this guy has been giving feedback. Unfortunately, you as a supervisor, you are not responding back. So this is another way of managing a situation. Now,
that's a good point, right? So if there is any
conflict, this data
disagreements, you can actually come and look at the type of
So this is a very good data point. You don't have to wait every 6 months. That's important. And then the human resource can also monitor and say, how come this employee is giving a lot of feedback? The supervisor not even responded for a month. That triggers an action quickly. Don't wait for 6 months. So it makes the organization very much involved in the growth of the employees and their supervisors. The most important thing is, how do we make this super important for the organization, is make it like a simple KPI. You got KPIs for everything you do. So that if I was a very conservative organization, I'd say, I'm going to come up with something new. I want every employee to use Happily. Therefore, 10% of your annual bonus or whatever is reflected on how actively you use your Happily, and the coins will do your butt-up curve or the bell curve or whatever you want to call, and measure that as a measurement that shows the organization is very engaging. Now, to couple that is, most organizations are looking at digital transformation, all right? Happily and Nicole, or Happily, it's a digital platform allowing employees to start being digital, and this gives the company some level of digital assessment of the employees. The amount of people use Happily is an indication the digital maturity. Therefore, when they go through a digital transformation, they know that when they come up with some new application to transform the organization, processes, automation, coming up with application, they know the percentage of employees will be engaging using those tools. So
I think
a lot of plus points.
Yeah, it's different for different organizations, for sure. Like, I was speaking to one very conservative manufacturing company, and that's exactly what they were thinking, right? They were thinking that this is one way for them to look at engagement, and they want to do it through KPIs. Sorry, I'm sneezing a lot. But they want to do a KPI to track it, right? But that wouldn't work in some other organizations where the culture is very different. They don't want this to be KPI driven. They want this to be natural and organic. So it is different for each company, and you have to kind of work through the culture. And for me, I can't see how not having it is better than having it, right? So that's one way to look at it. You definitely want to help those who are willing to. And Vix, you have never seen the dashboard at the back, but actually that's exactly what it does as well. It actually calls out active managers. So if a manager is very passive, meaning not responding to some of these, it actually calls it out in the dashboard upfront. So you can actually take action on that. So as HR, you can give some training to those managers as well. Okay.
Sashe, are you upset or you're crying or should we give you a break?
No. I'm having, like I say, low energy means low immune system. So allergies are kicking in. Okay, so the other big part which Leaderonomics we use a lot of is sharing, recognizing performance. And this is where you get to give 5 coins and 3 coins to each other, not from your stash, but the system gives you 5 coins to give to another person, right? And 3 coins to another person. And this refreshes every week or every 2 weeks, and encouraging people to recognize that. So as a manager, right, I might have someone on my team who has helped someone from another department, but I don't know that. But when that person recognizes my employee and I see it on Happily, I'm like, oh, okay, this person's been helping the other person. That's really good. I didn't know that, right? So, and then it makes that person feel good, because sometimes not everything you do is visible to your manager or to everyone else, especially those quiet ones, right? So this allows you to be more visible. The thing with the leadership medals of excellence is we can tie our core values to medals. And then these medals, certain leaders in the organization have the right to give medals. Now, how this helps is a lot of times in companies, your cultural beliefs or your values is just a poster on a wall, right? It sits there, there's nice descriptors, nice posters that sits on a wall. But now you can put those values into medals that leaders can give out. So when they see somebody with the right behavior, they can give out these medals. And when you give out these medals, every other employee gets to see that this is the right behavior that earns this value medal, right? So now you're bringing your values to life by showing people what the proper behavior for that value is. That's an interesting culture building tool as well. So I see a question here. The manager view of Happily are tips that help manager do necessary integration of certain answers from the uploading. Yeah, so Zinin, there is tips. I'll come to it in just a minute. Okay, so that's cultural values. So we even looked at, Happily also tries breaking it down into performance ratings and network effectiveness. So we actually start identifying different types of talent that are available in the company. Some people are more networked, some people are higher performance, but actually the best is to have both, right? So it helps you identify what to do with different types of people. The profile is very extensive, so you can earn badges as an individual. It shows you your network connectivity to the organization. This works better for larger organizations. For small organizations, you tend to be more networked. But larger organizations, actually, you'll find a lot of silos. So you can actually find where the silos are and who's the one that connecting the silos and take action on that as well. So that's also optional. I'll come to the insights and reports, which actually helps answer Zinin's question. But let me see, I think there's another question here. Okay. So on the insights and reports, there are many types of insights and reports. The first one is the one that comes on email. So managers get it on email, right? Managers get it on email, and leadership and HR get to see it on a web dashboard because they get to see it for the whole organization. So the manager's email looks exactly like this. They get an email daily and weekly. So on a daily basis, they will get a happiness score, as well as, so it's like this, they'll get a happiness score. So they can see by team, how different teams are doing for happiness. So if I was a manager and I had 3 teams reporting to me, I would obviously start paying a little bit more attention to the admin team here, right? Because, I mean, it's not too bad, right? Monday was red, but that's okay, right? We don't expect all greens, right? As long as there's not too many reds. But if I was manager Mike, I might spend a little bit more time with the admin team, right? So that's already an easy indication. Mike doesn't have infinite time to spend with everyone equally, right? So sometimes you have to focus on the area that needs the most attention. So Mike might want to focus on admin team on this case. You also get a 1 dimension a day, right? So every day there's one dimension that's measured. So in this case, Mike might get a satisfaction score that says, okay, 80% of your people feel challenged at work. You actually don't know who they are, but it's aggregated, right? So 80% feel challenged at work, that's green. 80% feel like what they're doing is important, that's green. But only 20% feel that their work is visible to their manager, so that's red. That's not good. So remember I told you we actually deep dive. I'm not telling you your people are disengaged. I'm not telling you that they are unsatisfied. I'm actually telling you exactly what the problem is, right? The problem is 20% of your team feel that their work is not visible to you. So you act on this. So as manager Mike, instead of being told that, can you please improve your employee engagement scores, which is not very helpful, I can tell Mike, can you do something about uh, making sure you're aware of what your people are doing, right? And then that's more helpful. That I can action on a little bit easier. And so isn't it that kind of answers your question, right? So you should get a little bit of that. On a weekly basis, you get multiple dimensions across the team. So on a daily basis, we focus in on one dimension. On a weekly basis, you get all the dimensions across all your teams. And every week, these dimensions change. So we measure different dimensions every week. So in this case, for Mike, wellness is a problem across all teams, right? So, so now this is where Mike says, okay, listen, this is not related to just one team, it's multiple teams. Mike might go to HR and say, hey, listen, I need some help. I need to improve wellness across all my teams. Can we do something either for all my teams, or can we do something company-wide on this? And if HR notices that this affects many teams, then maybe we can do something a little bit more systemic. If it's only related to one team, then Mike can handle it within his team himself, right? So that's how that works. Mike will also get some suggestions, talk to your team to find out what is making them unhappy. Being there to listen already helps. Help your team regroup and prioritize their work. Remind them to focus on one thing at a time. So there are help given to the managers as well. Mike also gets an indication of star performers, employees who are at risk of possibly being dissatisfied or disengaged. And then generally this is at risk of losing from your team, right? So we kind of highlight who's at risk, and there's complicated algorithms behind that kind of measure this. It even looks at the words that you use, how you're using the words, what are your responses, and things like that. You see, there's a question here. So there's no limit to direct reportees. As long as you are the team manager, you will be able to see aggregated. I mean, of course, if you have only one person reporting to you, the aggregate is one person. So then there's no such thing as anonymous, right? Oh, Ezra is joining us. Oh, wow, interesting. Even Arun's kid has joined us on this call. So that's that. From a HR or leadership point of view, you get access to the backend dashboard. And the backend dashboard has basically overall company view, right? So we can see overall statistics for the company, how people are doing based on tenure at the company. It highlights some of the key talking points like green and red, some things that are being said that are negative in the company, some things that are being said that are positive. It doesn't show who, it just kind of calls things that are being discussed in the chats. You also get to see, you get a success score for different dimensions. And because based on how many teams are low or high in that dimension. So it's all based on work-life dimensions. I can then drill down into a specific team. So for this team, which dimension, I can see whether this dimension is affecting all teams or just some teams. I can see who are the active managers, who are the passive managers. That means if I was HR, I would look at the passive manager list and probably give them some training on how to give good feedback or talk to their people more. I'll go and inquire a little bit more why they're not responding to their people. Potential managers is also called out. I mean, these are people that the algorithm finds to be good at giving feedback or good at describing things. So communication being one of the key factors of being a good manager, right? How articulate are you? How clear are you? So it calls that out as well. And then overall for the company, who are the people at risk? Who are the star performers? You can then deep dive into specific questions across different teams and see which question is low so that you can be more targeted in your interventions. Let's see. Got it. Computer issues today. No problems. Okay. There are some personalized coaching that happens. So of course, everybody is familiar with the sparks that we get. So every time you answer a question, you get to a quote. It's not just a quote, actually. You also sometimes get like a reminder or an action item to take. And these are all taken from popular business books, and it kind of cycles around. And the quote that you get is actually kind of related to a theme for that week. I personally like these because I like quotes as well. So to get a daily quote is nice. So sometimes you get a challenge, sometimes you get a reminder, sometimes you get a quote, and it's all from like a book. Yeah. The other thing is managers sometimes get challenges. So for example, manager Mike here, right? He has very low recognition scores in his team. So the score was 43%, and then the next time was 56%. So the system will challenge Mike and say, hey, listen, if you can get your recognition score up, I will give you a 10 coin bonus. Okay. And then gives you some suggestions of what you can do, like leave a thank you note or conclude your weekly meetings. And so if manager Mike accepts this challenge, he's got, he has to get 80% on recognition score the next time it's measured, right? Whenever it's measured next. And he accepts the challenge. It tells him he's got 4 days before it's going to be measured again. And if he does achieve it, then he gets the 10 coin reward. So sometimes the managers get challenges if your scores are low. Okay, so that's the core features and functionality of Happily. You know, daily pulse check, giving recognition to each other, giving feedback to each other, encouraging conversations with managers, doing peer feedback, making sure managers are paying attention to the insights and acting on it. HR gets the bigger insights and act on it. That's the core features. Then the other feature is Happily Village. And by the way, Happily Village can be turned off. So some clients just want to turn this off. They don't want these features. They just want the core features, right? Then we can actually sell it for cheaper. So Happily Village is where you have these additional features where people can be put into a house. So you know who belongs to what kind of personality. So whether you're a goal-oriented person, whether you're a process-oriented person, or whether you're a people-oriented person. You'll be categorized into different houses. Running track, for those of you who are competitive in terms of fitness, it links to your fitness devices. University to encourage skill exchange, so people can just post like a Learning Friday. And the cool thing about this is that you can charge coins for people to attend your class, or you can even give coins for people to attend your class. So if you wanted to do like a health and safety compliance course and you know it's boring and nobody wants to come, one way to encourage people to come is to say, okay, if you come, I'll give you 3 coins, right? So then everybody who attends and registers. So Happily takes care of that registration piece. And this is really not to do the formal training, but it's really to encourage people to say, hey, listen, if you have a skill and you want to teach it, just teach it through here, right? Just share it. Book a time. Even if you're going to share it to 2 people, it's okay. Just put it through here because other people may come in and want to join it as well, right? Town hall is where you can communicate. It's like a forum. You can run polls. You can do sharings of topics. You can encourage conversations. By the way, town halls and universities, you can limit it to certain groups. So if you want to only post the poll question to a certain group, you can as well. And then gift shop as well, you can redeem your points, or you can actually gift it to someone else. So that's another thing I think that's pretty cool, is that I earn all these coins. I don't actually have to redeem the reward for myself. I can actually redeem it for someone else. Okay. See a few questions here. Why no village? Oh no. How do you sell this to SME versus larger corporates? The value changes depending on the size of the organization. Also, another question is the sales approach similar to Nicole, where we sell to a smaller group of employees or to the whole organization, which has worked better? Got Andrea, but since on not saying that there's no village, what is the reward system for that organization? Which rewards to play a part in increasing kind of right? Okay, So let me answer the village question first. So the village doesn't affect the rewards because you still redeem your rewards. You still have so this gift shop isn't the redemption of rewards. This gift shop is for you to use your coins to buy a gift for someone else. So you don't have that option anymore if you take away the village. But you can always redeem the coins for yourself. That's not in the village. That's in the main core functionalities, right? So in terms of earning coins and redeeming them, you still have that even without the village. Yeah. Yes, directly through your profile. That's right, Andrea. On the second question on how do we sell this to SME versus larger corporates, I find that, okay, so pre-COVID, I think, I would have said, don't sell this to any company below 50 people, definitely not. I'm looking for 100 and above, which means they're not SMEs, right? Because I think the way you look at it, right? Take the extreme case. If you have a company of 5 people, do you need Happily? Because chances are you're meeting with each other every day and you're talking to each other every day and everybody knows what they're doing and they're quite engaged, right? And as you get to 20, 30, you're still pretty connected. Once you get to about 50, that's when you start getting disconnected a little bit. And once you get to 100, that's when you need tools to make sure that you keep in touch, keep engagement, and you keep a finger on the pulse of the organization. So that's the way I look at it. But like Vix pointed out, nowadays, because of a lot of remote work, even companies of 50 people feel like they don't have good engagement with their employees. They feel like they don't know what's going on. They're not in touch. They don't have a pulse. So today it works for remote workforces. So for smaller companies with remote workforce, primarily remote workforce, I think Happily works. Otherwise, I go for larger companies. And I definitely think that it works better. It doesn't have to be the whole organization, but it has to be a large enough group of people. So for example, in a company, you might want to have, there's some companies that I'm talking to where they want to put all their white collar workers on it, right? Office workers. People down in the manufacturing line, not really, because they are doing shift work. They don't have access to their apps. And shift supervisors are actually very much involved with those people. So the engagement is very high. But in terms of white collar workers, office workers, they want to kind of roll out the app. So you don't have to roll it out to the whole organization, but it has to be a logical group and a large enough group so that you get aggregated data over time. Let me see. I think I answered those questions, right? Okay, so I'm gonna kind of skip forward. Most of you know the details around this. So the idea is really, detect negative states quickly, and you can do that through our daily insights, weekly insights, and talent analytics. And when you detect negative states quickly, and not just detect, really know why, and give suggestions as to how to flip it, you can actually flip the negative states into positive states. And on top of that, there's some self-sustaining forces to keep positive states, which is like the recognition, the sparks, the rewards, Happily Village, conversations with your managers, getting feedback from your peers. Those all help sustain some of the positive forces as well. But I think the key is how to detect negative states quickly and act on it. That's about it. Anything else? This is a quick ROI that was done. This is a conservative estimate. If it costs you 6,000 US dollars for a 100-person employee, a 100-employee company, the ROI studies show that you can probably gain an ROI of 48,000, right? If you just improve retention by 2% and if you improve productivity by 2%. They say that employee engagement can improve this by a lot more, right? So I'm being very conservative here. The actual studies are like 10% or 20%. I just took 2%. If you just take 2% improvement in retention alone, your ROI is there, right? Even 1% improvement in retention, your ROI is there really, right? So in terms of ROI, I think it's a very positive case study. Let's see, do I have anything else? One thing that's good to know is that the launch, it's very easy to roll out Happily. It takes 2 weeks, yeah? And this is kind of the rollout plan. We have a first meeting. We complete the onboarding sheet. Um, there's a this is we have a teaser video that we send out. We set up the system. We recommend a note from the CEO before you launch, and then there's a launch, and then training for the admin, and then support for reward management. We don't do yet, but this is a service that we could provide in the future on redemption of rewards. So this whole thing takes about 2 weeks to set up and roll. So if a client says, I want to go today, I can get them up and running in 2 weeks. Yeah. So it's quite fast. And that's all I've got. Any other questions? There you go. What has been the biggest challenge to get Happily into organizations? Okay, thanks, Sashe. Okay, so I think Happily is a nice one to demo to companies because, you know, sometimes you demo products or solutions to companies and you can tell some people are excited by it. Some people will upfront tell you, no, it's not for us. Some people will tell you, yeah, we have something like it. Some people will be lukewarm, like they'll be like, oh, okay, let me think about it, right? When I demo Happily, I almost always get a positive reaction. Almost always everybody's like, wow, this looks really good. This could help us. I want this. So that's one thing nice about demoing Happily. You get really positive reactions and people really do want it. The problem is this, right? And this is the problem that we've had with Nicole for a while as well, right? When you try to sell a platform like this, which is for all employees, number one, it's a huge barrier that you have to cross because this is like a enterprise application that's going to be rolled out for everyone. It's like buying an ERP. It's like buying something big for the company. It's a commitment. You're asking for a commitment to run this for all employees for a year. So it always takes time, right? Which is why, Nicole, we went to a service model where I said, listen, you don't have to roll this out for the whole company. Just roll it out for 20 people, right? Give them this curriculum for 20 people. Then we start seeing traction. So Happily has that other problem, right? Because it's a huge investment and barrier. The second thing is everybody has an L&D budget. Everybody has an IT budget, but not everybody has a budget for engagement, right? Usually what they do is they have a budget to run an engagement survey. So for the companies who run an engagement survey with a third party like Aon Hewitt, we have a very compelling reason because I always ask them, how much are you paying Aon Hewitt to run your survey, right? If you could take that money, top up just a little bit, you don't ever have to run that survey anymore because I can give you that daily insight and weekly insight, right? So it's a replacement of the money that they've set aside for the employee engagement survey. But the thing is, companies don't have a budget for an employee engagement tool. What they do is they wait for the survey results, and then for the next year, based on the results, they will budget for certain activities. Like, okay, I have a budget for annual dinner. I have a budget for a sports club. I have a budget to do badminton every week, right? But they don't have a budget for a platform. They just never thought about it. So by doing these conversations, I'm letting them be aware that, hey, listen, this is a possibility. Maybe you should budget this in. So it might take 12 months to get it into their budget process, but hopefully not. So I spoke to a company recently where their whole sports committee came to the meeting, right? Because they wanted to replace their sports committee budget and use that budget for Happily. So finding that budget is probably the biggest challenge. Hope I explained that. Anybody else? You can also unmute and talk to me. I'm kind of sick of hearing my own voice. Then daily emails, follow-up, that's what monthly metrics for managers, team leads. Yep, Arun, good question. It's coming soon. So there's daily, weekly emails. But what we are coming up with soon is a trending that's missing. So a dashboard where managers can see the trending of different dimensions for their own team. HR and senior leaders can see this now for the whole company, but right now managers only get the weekly snapshot. So we want to put it all together in a dashboard and show the trending of how things happened over time. So that's coming in probably Q1.
Sashe, I have another question. Right?
Yes.
I think the coming back to your challenge of that budgets versus implementation, right? I think maybe the biggest challenge is within Malaysia or the market that you're in. Yeah, I think you kind of need a lead company to take that forward, right? So, for example, if you have a CIMB who wants to do this for the organization, then it kind of sets the landscape for the rest to follow suit. And you need that somebody who's a big name brand, I guess. So how do we find a way to get one of those kind of customers as the lead off for more? Because I think it's more about people don't know that they need to plan for these kind of platforms or whether these platforms add value, right? I think they really need to follow an example of a company that does it well. That makes it a lot easier for people to naturally come to that conclusion themselves, and then eventually reach out to some of these platform providers, which is Leaderonomics.
Agree. Completely agree. I have a case study here somewhere hidden in one of these slides. Yeah, so this is a case study of a company in Thailand of 820 people. But yeah, we need a case study here in Malaysia. I think that would help a lot. This is an actual client who actually used it and actually tracked their own data. So this wasn't done by us or Happily. It was actually done by them to see after they implemented what they could see as ROIs. And this is what they got, which I think is pretty powerful when the client reports it themselves and attributes it to Happily. But we need something like that here in Malaysia for sure. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, got one more question coming in. So how much per employee would a client need to fork out? So the retail price, the published retail price is 25 ringgit per user per month, right? We can go down much lower. So if you give us like 100 people, then it goes down to 20 ringgit per user per month. If you go to like 500 people, we can go down to 15 ringgit per user per month. And the one good thing about Happily is that we only charge for active users. So even though you get charged 15 or 20 ringgit per user per month, if somebody doesn't use the app at all for this month, we don't charge you for them, even though they're registered on the system. Because like I said, we understand that some employees will just not use the system, right? They're just not the type who wants to give you feedback, who doesn't want to engage. That's fine, right? So we don't charge you for that. So we make that easy. So yeah, 15 to 25 ringgit per user per month. If you don't want Happily Village, then we can go even lower. So it's flexible. Okay. Let's stop share.
Sashe,
How's everyone doing?
do you want to talk about how we may plan in the future to bundle Nicole with Happily as a solution stack?
Yeah, and that's the idea. We haven't actually figured that out yet, but the companies need both learning and engagement solutions, right? And really the vision, I keep coming back to the vision, right? Learning, how do we make learning a habit for employees? How do we make learning more effective for employees? How do we make employees more engaged with their workplaces? These are really good problems to solve in the workplace, and there is a I can't think of the word, synergy between these two things, right? And it's up to us to find a solution to bridge these two and go in together as a single product, as a single solutions and service. So with Nicole, when we built it as a service, we said, okay, let's provide curriculums, let's provide blended learning through Nicole. Happily, we'll bring a service together, but then we also need to bring a service together that bundles both. So that's kind of in the pipeline for this year, as to how to figure that out to go to, yeah, for sure. All right. Anybody else? Got 1 minute before the next meeting.
Sashe, was a good session. To be honest, it's a good session for me also to learn.
Thank you.
I realized there's more about Happily. Now I understand why you said when you present Happily, you come out from the meeting also happy. The client really sees the value. It's true.
Yeah.
It's how you position it and the value and the pricing. Like you said, if it's not active, you don't pay for the month. I think that's a good point to bring up during the discussion with the client,
Hmm.
so they don't feel they're paying for everybody and only 20% use. You can say, don't worry, you don't have to pay for that.
Yep. Yep.
And something to think about, this is where Leaderonomics corporate can play a role. After 3 months, based on the data, it can go in and say, listen, we notice you may need some help, and we may have certain training programs
absolutely.
to help your leaders or supervisors.
Yeah, it can be a lead generation. So because we get
Right.
access to the data, right? So once a company
Exactly.
uses it, we get the full data insights, and then from that insight, we can
Exactly.
say, hey, by the way, we've noticed this. Maybe you
Exactly.
could benefit from this training or this training, or evocs or assessments, or
Arun
maybe
smiling.
your managers need to go through this.
Arun smiling. 6 o'clock is going to go and get some money after it's 6 o'clock. You got 28 minutes to get it.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming,
Thank
spending
you.
an hour listening.
Thanks, man.